So when they start blaming the other branch for their own ineptitude and their own delay in action, they're wrecking the only tool that they have. The Chief Justice can defend the court by overruling bad judges before the executive and the legislative branches start acting against them. The burden is on the Chief Justice, not the president. Mind your branch, John.
And you know, there are 261 reasons why Americans are safer tonight, because 261 of those monsters have been taken out of our country.
Hack judges trying to take over the country. We've got Chaung, Boasberg, Reyes, and many, many more. Trump now coming out saying it's time to impeach. President dropping this on True Social, saying this radical left lunatic of a judge, Judge Boasberg, is a troublemaker and agitator who was sadly appointed by Barack Hussein Obama, was not elected president, the judge. He didn't win the popular vote by a lot, like Trump did. He didn't win all 7 swing states, like Trump did. He didn't win 2750 counties to the losers, 525 counties. In fact, this judge didn't win anything. I won for many reasons in an overwhelming mandate, but fighting illegal immigration may have been the number one reason for this historic victory. I'm just doing what the voters wanted me to do. This judge, like many of the crooked judges I'm forced to appear before, should be impeached. We don't want vicious, violent, and demented criminals, many of them deranged murderers, in our country. Make America great again. Paul Saipula sharing an image of this judge, Judge Boasberg. And this case, of course, is involving the alleged Tren de Aragua gang members who were deported over the weekend. And the judge said, I want answers from you. I want to know specifically what you have done and when you did it. Judge Boasberg is now under the action of impeachment. Congressman Brandon Gill, who is a representative over from Texas, said, I just introduced articles of impeachment against radical activist Judge James Boasberg. He's guilty of high crimes and misdemeanors and should be removed from office. Says, be it resolved that James Boasberg, Chief Judge of the United States District of Columbia Court, is hereby impeached for high crimes and misdemeanors. And the following articles still need to be voted on and then brought over to the Senate, but this is just the submission. Says these are exhibited by the House of Representatives against James Boasberg. Says he is the District of Columbia judge, and that the judge, in violation of his oath in office, did knowingly and willfully use his judicial position as a judge to advance political gain, doing this while interfering with President Trump's constitutional prerogatives and enforcement of the rule of law. Saying the Constitution provides that the House of Representatives shall have the sole power of impeachment, and that civil officers of the United States, including federal judges, are subject to impeachment and removal. And further, the separation of powers under the Constitution grants the president broad authority over the executive branch, including authority to protect the nation, as part of his role in ensuring the administration of laws, including the Alien Enemies Act and the policies of the United States. Now, explaining the Alien Enemies Act commits to the president's sole and unreviewable discretion, meaning it's not justiciable. You can't sue over this. The president has the power to do it. You can't sue him for doing it, including the power to determine whether an invasion has taken place. If the judge can say to the president, actually, there is not an invasion, well, guess who is the president then? The judge. As the Supreme Court has explained, for a court to second guess a president's determination under the Alien Enemies Act would be assuming, writes the articles, the functions of the political agencies of the government, right? The court would become the executive branch. And it's not for the courts to question, quote, the president's determination under the Alien Enemies Act, because these are matters of political judgment for which judges have neither technical competence nor official responsibility. That's the Ludke versus Watkins case, or Ludek versus Watkins case. Yet, notwithstanding this binding precedent from the highest court in the land, Chief Judge Boasberg has done exactly what the Supreme Court commanded not be done. You can't substitute your judgment for the president's, and has illegitimately tried to substitute his own judgment for that of the elected president of the United States, thereby usurping the role of the executive and unilaterally taking upon himself the power and the authority of the president. Through his conduct in which he violated his oath to the Constitution and duty of impartiality to the people of the United States, Chief Boasberg has abused the powers of his judicial authority, having engaged in actions that prioritize political gain over the duty of impartiality, we'll talk more about that, owed to the public and litigants as follows. Here's what he's done. Judge Boasberg has prevented President Trump from removing aliens associated with Tren de Aragua, a designated foreign terrorist organization, from the United States. And two, second charge, Boasberg required President Trump to turn around planes mid-air that had aliens associated with Tren de Aragua, which is a designated foreign terrorist organization. Said, bring them back. I want them in my home. Now, this conduct, writes the congressman in these articles of impeachment drafted and submitted, jeopardizes the safety of the nation, represents an abuse of judicial power, and is detrimental to the orderly functioning of the judiciary. Using the powers of his office, Boasberg has attempted to seize power from the executive branch and to interfere with the will of the American people. In so doing, Boasberg used his powers and his position to engage in actions that overstep his judicial authority. By making a political decision outside the scope of his duties, he compromised the impartiality of our system and created a constitutional crisis. And so wherefore, Boasberg is guilty of high crimes and misdemeanors and should be removed from office. Articles of impeachment for Boasberg, a good start. And I saw a great post yesterday, courtesy of our friend on Locals, G-Man, who was referencing Andrew Branca, who's saying, there's another idea here. There's a thesis that you don't actually have to go to the impeachment level to meet that high standard where you might need 2/3 of the House and the Senate, where you can just remove them for bad behavior and just do it by simple majority of Congress. We'll see if that idea catches on, but wanted to shout that one out to Andrew Branca because the Constitution does say that. So that is underway. We've also got more questions about this judge because the judge, of course, has conflicts of interest. And here's what has been discovered, courtesy of Pepe's grandma over on X, Bad Kitty Unleashed. Breaking expose. The Boasberg twins are the sisters of Judge James Boasberg. We've got Melissa and Margaret. And both of those girls, I know you're going to be shocked, are linked to far-left organizations. Amazing. And Melissa worked with Susan Rice's brother. You remember her? She was from Obama. But first, here's the story. Arabella Advisors was sold in 2020, and the Concentric Equity Partners is now the majority owner. And Concentric is also a partner where Melissa Boasberg works. So they're all in it together. Between the two of them, they've worked with Bain, Arabella, Atlantic Council, Booz Allen, Pritzker's, Reid Hoffman, basically everybody. She wants to go through them. Says, start with Margaret. I want you to notice the Bain and the Atlantic Philanthropies are the Atlantic Council. They're connected to both. Margaret is a partner at the Bridgespan Group for Philanthropy. It also runs the Bridgespan Social Impact website. Margaret also worked at Bain. Bridgespan was spun out. They had experience in pro bono services. Her husband currently works there, and they've worked with everybody, right? La Raza, Atlantic Council, Ford, Pritzker's, Wikimedia, ADL, Rockefeller, and more. Melissa works with Susan Rice's brother, John Rice. Works with Atlantic Philanthropies, which is Atlantic Council. Also works with Greylock, Reid Hoffman, Arabella, Bain, Bill and Melinda Gates. And here's what you know about the two of the MLT leaders, okay? These guys also work on these operations. So here's Margaret Boasberg, partner at Bridgespan, direct service organizations in several fields, public health, worked extensively with mental health, leading nonprofits, right, and philanthropies in this field with nonprofits and more. Currently leads our public health area of expertise. Isn't that nice? What an amazing person, partner over there. Brother, the judge, waging war against Trump, is in service of their cabal, right, of their clan. They're all Democrats, right? The reason the judges get these judicial positions appointed by Obama, appointed by Biden, is because they're good soldiers. Says Arabella went first, right? So James's nickname is Jeb, probably sisters, might not be, but certainly goes all the way back, partners at Bain. And you think about USAID money, right, and the Trump hatchet that is going to these Democrat institutions, you start to see where these conflicts of interest emerge. So great thread from Bad Kitty Unleashed. But of course, we're talking about impeachment now with all of that happening. Rep. Barry Moore is also joining in with Brandon Gill, saying it's time to remove activist judges who look to advance their own agendas instead of adhering to the law. And Mike Lee is responding to this post from the judge, Chief John Roberts. After Trump posted that this judge and others should be impeached, John Roberts of the Supreme Court came out and sent this. For more than 2 centuries, it has been established that impeachment is not an appropriate response to disagreement concerning a judicial decision. The normal appellate review process exists for that purpose. You go, oh gosh, John Roberts, are you serious? For more than 2 centuries, that has been the process. You know what also has not been the norm for those 2 centuries is a district level judge cutting off every single action of the executive branch, issuing nationwide injunctions. The judge is saying that normal appellate review process is not normal right now. It's being gamed. Judges are issuing orders, eliminating executive orders nationwide beyond their jurisdiction, covering all the other states. Someone sues in New York, they do it for New York. If you want to make the geographic argument, say, well, just just limit it to New York, limit it to this area, right? Then you can sue in those areas. Then the circuits can set the law for different areas. Then the Supreme Court can come in and decide for the entire country. But the Supreme Court is not doing any of that. So what is happening is we have Democrat judges with daughters who are in on the grift, in my opinion, who are mucking up the entire system. And for John Roberts to come out and blame Trump for these judges is undermining his own credibility. And by the way, the U.S. Constitution doesn't say anything that impeachment is only appropriate after a Supreme Court hears a case. If judges are acting illegally and aiding and abetting criminals because they've got conflicts of interest or because of other improprieties, you don't need to wait until the Supreme Court says it's okay to file impeachment. If this judge is committing high crimes and misdemeanors that satisfy the political standards in Congress, that's good enough. The Constitution doesn't mandate we go through John Roberts in order to get that done. And every time he posts something like this, he is undermining the court's credibility. And the court has only their credibility and their legitimacy. It's all they have. They don't have the power of the purse. They don't have a military like the executive branch. So when they start blaming the other branch for their own ineptitude and their own delay in action, they're wrecking the only tool that they have. And John Roberts is a fool for not acting to save the credibility of the judiciary by rectifying this very big problem that's underway right now. So this case is up on appeal. President Trump, of course, has submitted this to the Court of Appeals in the District of Columbia. They said, hey, dear court clerk, the government was ordered today to provide additional information after the hearing. So we had the hearing at 5 p.m. yesterday. Now, at the hearing, this judge asked several questions that could have required the disclosure of sensitive operational details. And this raises serious national security concerns. And so following the hearing, the judge ordered the government to address a series of issues, including by declaration to provide answers like this: whether and in what form. I want questions about the flights answered. Now, the district court is thus continuing to press for details that are sensitive and in many cases not relevant to any issue presented. The order and inquiries continue to underscore the need for a stay pending appeal in this case. We need a stay and the urgency with which such stays are needed. Notwithstanding the district court's blithe suggestion that the government can easily provide details, even classified details, about our operations with foreign terrorist organizations, we have to guard against national security. And so, Court of Appeals, this court should have a chance to rule on the government's request for a stay. Don't make us answer these questions about these plane trips, and don't make us disclose national security information to this hack judge. Respectfully submitted, Drew Ensign from Trump's DOJ into the Court of Appeals in Washington, D.C. Now, they're not alone. We've also got 26 states now joining President Trump to fight against the judge who is ordering Trump to provide answers on the deportation of Tren de Aragua terrorists who were sent back down to El Salvador. Trump and a stay is necessary so that we can further develop the case and protect national security. Here's what's been submitted in the Court of Appeals for the District of Columbia. 24 states, starting with South Carolina and Virginia, now asking for a stay. This is on appeal, and here's what they are writing. All right, these amicus states are the following. Bunch of red states: South Carolina, Virginia, Alabama, Alaska. You see the list. Arizona's not on there. All right, each state is directly impacted by criminal activity perpetrated by violent gangs, and each state has an interest in protecting its citizens from these criminals. So that's why the states support robust actions against gangs like the notorious Venezuelan gang Tren de Aragua, who are wreaking havoc within our borders. Writing to the Court of Appeals, the states say, Trump's recent executive order uses constitutional and statutory authority to deport Venezuelan citizens who are members of Tren and are not American citizens or lawful permanent residents. The same day a complaint was filed challenging this action, and without any briefing from the federal government at all, a lone district judge certified a class of non-citizens in custody affected by the order and then issued a nationwide TRO, barring the administration from removing foreign terrorists regardless of any threat that they present. So the states obviously say this is ridiculous. This should be stayed for two reasons. First, the TRO undermines the security of the states. Tren de Aragua has ravaged innocent citizens across the country, and the states finally have a welcome partner in the presidency, finally, willing to fight for the safety and the security of the American people. But when Trump endeavored to remove violent gangbangers from the United States, a single district court judge who was working with gangbang lovers, the gangbanger ACLU lawyers, sued, and then they stopped Trump from carrying out the mission anywhere all across the country because the gangbangers got certified as a class, allowing Trump to continue its operations and criminal criminal activities in the amici states. Now, the public interest weighs in favor of the safety and the security of the American citizens. Okay, we should deport them. It's better for the country than keeping them here. Second, the TRO fails to properly evaluate the sources of the president's authority for his recent actions. Trump acted according to both constitutional and statutory authority. And at this confluence of two significant fronts of authority, the judiciary should have been reticent to issue a nationwide injunction. They at least should have heard from the government. And that error alone calls for a stay of the TRO, saying this Judge Boasberg, undermines the security of the states. The president's proclamation describes clearly the brutality of Tren de Aragua, and that comports with what the states have been experiencing. And so according to Trump's constitutional authority, he issued a proclamation, and they're true. Says these people are doing eliminations and kidnapping and extortions and trafficking and more. And their objective is to harm citizens. And Maduro is trying to destabilize America. Now, the states and our experiences bolster and support Trump's findings on this point. The states and our citizens have been subject to escalating acts of violence committed by these people. In the past year alone, TDA members have murdered American citizens, seized property, and violently attacked police officers. In particular, their horrific murder of Laken Riley necessitated the passage of the Laken Riley Act, and they reportedly terrorized an entire apartment complex. They used it as a hub of illegal activities, including for abuse of minors. And they've notably given a green light to go and attack law enforcement officers. All of this is being reported. Now, their presence is felt far and wide. Last month, ICE officials arrested multiple members during a routine daily operation in South Carolina. They've been linked to Virginia as well, and a bunch of other states. And indeed, they're at the very doorstep of the nation's capital in North Virginia. Well, maybe they can go to this judge's house and have a conversation with him and his family. As long as TDA is continued to allowed to operate throughout the United States, the gang will rain down a deluge of criminal activity all across the country. And our citizens are actively being harmed by this. So in response to these harms, the states have attempted to protect and will continue to protect their citizens. After all, the core function of the state's police powers is health and safety. And we will do this to defend our citizens from these illegal aliens. And states and localities can act with immigration partners. Many of the states have done that, have tried to take the fight directly to TDA. But states are constrained when they're trying to counter threats posed by transnational criminal organizations. States are not in the position to negotiate with foreign governments. We can't go after Maduro. And so the states welcome the powers of the president and the commander-in-chief to protect the American people using the prescribed powers afforded to that office. But by issuing a universal TRO without the benefit of even hearing from the states or the Trump administration, failed to consider the balance of the harms and should be reversed. So, Court of Appeals, reverse this. This judge is undermining national security. Trump issued a proclamation under the Constitution and then also provided independent bases for removing these gangbangers from the country. Article 2 says the president has substantial authority over foreign affairs and national security, and the Supreme Court has recognized the plenary and the exclusive power of the president when it comes to international relations. Doesn't require Congress to act. And as the court has also explained in another case from 1952, it is pertinent to observe that any policy towards aliens is vitally and intricately interwoven with policies of foreign relations, foreign powers, and more. And so Trump was acting pursuant to another statute passed by Congress. The authority under that statute is uniquely ill-suited for judicial review. As the Supreme Court claimed in the other case called the Ludecky versus Watkins case, full responsibility for the just exercise of this great power may validly be left where Congress has constitutionally placed it. It's in the power of the President of the United States. The founders, in their wisdom, made him not only the commander-in-chief, but also the guiding organ in our foreign affairs, entrusted with vast powers as it relates to the world. Each of those fonts of authority are independently compelling. Working in tandem, however, they provide a strong basis for executive action against TDA. When the president acts pursuant to an express or implied authorization, his authority is at his maximum, yesterday's zenith, apex. The district court should have been circumspect in granting the nationwide TRO under these circumstances, and so its failure to do so should be remedied. And so you should stay this court's TRO pending appeal signed by 26 states, all seen here. Now, Newt Gingrich also is commenting on Roberts, says if Chief Justice Roberts wants to minimize the attacks on out-of-control appointed left-wing district court judges abusing their role and claiming to be able to overrule the elected president of the United States, States on management details that are clearly within his role as defined by the Constitution and the Federalist Papers, then he should intervene and overrule these absurd power grabs. The Chief Justice can defend the court by overruling bad judges before the executive and the legislative branches start acting against them. The burden is on the Chief Justice, not the president. Mind your branch, John. The judiciary is your branch. If your judiciary starts acting the fool, then the other branches have no choice but to use their powers under the Constitution to check them. So get your people in order and stop criticizing the other branches when you can't even manage your own household. Tim Burchett had a lot of awesome things to say, but now we've got Pam Bondi. Here's what she says about the Alien Enemies Act.
Well, Janine, the Alien Enemies Act applies to a situation just like this. And it's interesting, people argue that it's such an old law. I think an old law is a virtue, not a vice. Think about that. Our founding fathers knew exactly what they were doing, and it applies to a situation just like this. Trans de Agua, they are a foreign arm of the Venezuelan government. They are organized, they have a command structure, and they have invaded our country. They are raping, they are murdering U.S. citizens, and they are coming here in mass numbers. And Donald Trump invoked the Alien Enemies Act just like he should, and he has gotten rid of them. There are a lot more to go. And you know, there are 261 reasons why Americans are safer tonight, because 261 of those monsters have been taken out of our country. They're one of the most violent organizations in the world, and they had invaded America, Janine.
All right, so Pam Bondi now out explaining that there will be more coming. The president is at the apex of his power, and that is good news. We'll keep our eye on what's coming next from Pam and the rest of the team.